One summer evening in 2000, inside a packed high school auditorium in a tiny Alabama town, a city council candidate stepped up to the podium and said something that froze the entire room. News cameras flashed. People leaned forward in confusion. The man adjusted the microphone, looked directly into the crowd, and said, "I know who murdered Charlotte Hayes because I saw it in a dream." For a second, nobody moved. Then whispers exploded across the room, because everyone in town knew about Charlotte Hayes. 2 years earlier, her brutal murder had shattered this quiet Southern community, a murder so violent, so personal, that even after years, nobody had forgotten it. And now, a politician was publicly accusing the town's most respected man, Charlotte's own husband. But before anyone understood why that accusation mattered, you need to go back to the morning Charlotte Hayes died. August 4th, 1998. Lynette, Alabama. At first glance, the Hayes family looked perfect. Charlotte Hayes was 49 years old, a respected school administrator, loved by teachers, students, neighbors, pretty much everyone. Her husband, Barry Hayes, was the acting mayor of the town, polite, educated, trusted. Together, they lived in a beautiful upper-middle-class neighborhood where crime almost never happened. That Tuesday morning, Charlotte hurried around the kitchen with coffee in one hand and paperwork in the other. Barry stood beside the sink washing dishes. It looked like a normal married couple starting a normal day. But beneath the surface, tension was building. Charlotte was preparing for a legal meeting later that afternoon, involving a bitter inheritance dispute with her cousin, Wayne. A large piece of valuable land was involved, and the fight had already divided the family. Barry quietly asked her, "Have you decided what you're going to do?" Charlotte sighed. She admitted she was considering splitting the inheritance just to stop the family drama. Barry nodded slowly, but inside, something dark shifted. Because what Charlotte didn't know was that her husband was secretly drowning in debt, and her inheritance might have been the only thing keeping him financially alive. Before leaving for work, Charlotte walked upstairs to wake her 17-year-old daughter, Kara. The moment she opened the bedroom door, she heard a weak groan. Kara looked pale, sick, exhausted. Not because she was lazy, because she was pregnant. And Charlotte hated the situation. Not the baby, but the father, Dave Reed, a reckless local guy with a drinking problem and a history of trouble with police. Charlotte and Barry had forbidden Kara from seeing him. But the relationship continued in secret until the pregnancy exposed everything. Still, despite her disappointment, Charlotte tried to support her daughter. She reminded Kara that her older sister Heather was coming home from college that evening and asked her to be home for dinner. Kara promised she would. Charlotte smiled softly, not realizing this would be the last conversation she would ever have with her daughter. Around 11:30 that morning, Charlotte unexpectedly returned home after a salon appointment. She wanted to quickly fix her hair before heading back to work. The neighborhood was quiet, safe, peaceful. She parked in the garage, walked inside, and headed upstairs toward the bathroom. As she plugged in her hairdryer, she suddenly heard the downstairs door open. Charlotte froze. Kara was supposed to be babysitting. Barry never came home for lunch, so who was downstairs? Slowly, Charlotte stepped into the hallway, and that single decision would cost her everything. Hours later, around 4:30 p.m., Charlotte's oldest daughter, Heather, pulled into the driveway after driving home from college. At first, nothing seemed strange. Then she noticed the garage door was open. Her mother's car was still there. That was unusual. Charlotte should have been at work. Heather grabbed her bags and walked toward the kitchen entrance. Then she saw the door slightly cracked open. A chill ran through her body. She pushed the door slowly. "Mom?" No answer. She stepped inside. The house was silent. Too silent. Heather walked through the kitchen, turned the corner into the foyer, and suddenly stopped. Her mother was lying motionless at the bottom of the staircase. Heather dropped everything and ran screaming toward her. But the moment she touched Charlotte's leg, she knew. Her mother was already cold. Minutes later, police arrived. Lieutenant Richard Carter rushed inside expecting a medical emergency. Instead, he walked into a nightmare. Charlotte's body lay twisted near the staircase. Her purse had been dumped across the floor. At first, it looked like maybe she'd fallen. But then Carter noticed the scratches on her face, the bruises around her neck, the blood. This wasn't an accident. This was murder. And whoever killed Charlotte had done it up close, personal, violent. As investigators searched the home, they discovered bloody towels hidden in the laundry room. But strangely, nothing valuable had been stolen. Not the television, not jewelry, not cash. The robbery scene looked staged, which meant one terrifying possibility. Charlotte knew her killer. That evening, Charlotte's husband Barry arrived at the crime scene. The moment he saw his wife's body, he collapsed into a panic attack so severe, paramedics rushed him to the hospital. At first, police sympathized with him. He looked devastated, broken. But investigators quickly realized something disturbing. Barry had no visible injuries, no scratches, no bruises. And yet Charlotte had clearly fought for her life. Still, Barry calmly pointed detectives toward two other suspects, Kara's boyfriend Dave and Charlotte's cousin Wayne. Both had motives. Both had tension with Charlotte. And for a while, police believed Barry. But every lead collapsed. Dave had an alibi. Wayne had an alibi. Even fingerprint evidence led nowhere. Months turned into years. The case slowly died, until one shocking event changed everything. In 2000, Barry Hayes decided to run for city council. During the campaign, one of his opponents publicly accused him of murder. Not with evidence, not with witnesses, but with a dream. And bizarrely, that accusation reopened the entire investigation. Tips flooded the police department again. Most were useless. Until finally, years later, two people came forward with information that changed everything. Barry's own daughters, Heather and Kara. The sisters finally revealed what they had hidden for years. Their father had secretly been drowning in financial debt. He desperately needed Charlotte's inheritance money. And when Charlotte decided she might split the land with her cousin, Barry snapped. The girls also admitted something even darker. Barry had pressured them into staying quiet, manipulated them, even tried to steal their insurance money after Charlotte's death. Suddenly, everything made sense. Police reconstructed the murder. Barry had returned home during the day, confronted Charlotte upstairs. An argument exploded. He struck her, then used the strings from her own blouse to strangle her. Finally, he kicked her body down the stairs to stage an accident. The loving husband, the grieving mayor, had been the killer all along. In February 2006, Barry Hayes was arrested for the murder of his wife. The once respected mayor stood in court as prosecutors exposed years of lies, greed, manipulation, and betrayal. And after hearing the evidence, the jury found him guilty of first-degree murder. Sentence: 40 years in prison. The quiet Alabama town that once trusted Barry completely now viewed him as a monster hiding behind a smile. And the strangest part? If not for one bizarre political speech about a dream, the case might have stayed cold forever. Because sometimes, the most dangerous killers aren't strangers hiding in the dark. They're the people sitting beside you at the dinner table.